Hi everyone, welcome to Boommaking Podcast. And today I'm going to talk about a book named How Psychology Works, written by Joe Hemmings. This episode is 9.2, and the topic is Behaviorist Approach. In this topic, I already have a Thai version of it. If you want to listen to Thai version, you can listen through my podcast channel, which name is Boommaking Podcast on YouTube. Okay, let's get started. Behaviorist approach or behavioral psychology analyzes and treats people on the basis that their behavior is learned by interacting with the world, conflicting with Sigmund Freud's theory of psychoanalytic that he believed subconscious influence our behavior. But in this approach, it's not about the subconscious, but it's about the environment around us. So let's get to know the behavioral psychology more. What is it? Behavioral psychology is a focus on only observable human behavior, excluded the thoughts and emotion. This approach rests on three main assumptions. First of all, people learn their behavior from the world around them, not from innate or inherent factors. Secondly, as psychology is a science, all the suppose all the theory should be measurable data from control experiments and observations. And lastly, all behavior is the result of stimulus that triggers a particular response. Once the behavioral psychologist has identified person's stimulus response, they can predict it, which they use a method known as classical conditioning, which I will talk late about it later. And in therapy, the therapist use this prediction to help the client change their behavior. For the evaluation, the strength of the behaviorist approach is it can be scientifically proven, unlike Freud, a psychoanalytic approach. Many of the behavioral experiments were carried out on rats, dogs, and humans. In particular, rejected the assumption that people in the world act in the same way as animals in laboratory conditions. Behavioral psychology also take a little account of a free will or biological factors such as hormones, which reducing human experience to a set of conditioned behaviors. John Watson developed behavioral psychology in 1913. His theory came with the early 20th century trend for data-backed science rather than concentrating on subject workings of the mind. And the behaviorist approach was influential for decades. Later, psychologists interpret behavioral theory along more flexible lines, but the objective evidence remained a cornerstone of research. So, John Watson was the first person who developed this theory, but later psychologists use this theory in a more flexible ways. But the proof or the evidence should be um, experimental, that measurable. So let's us move on to the method that used to experiment our behavior. This method that I'm going to talk about first is classical conditioning. Classical conditioning was experimented by Pavlov. He said that his dog salivated at the sight of food, and when he see the dog salivated at the sight of food, he start ringing a bell at the same time as feeding the dog food. After that, the dogs salivated merely at the sound of the bell, which means they associate with the food now. In a simple way, it's like before the experiment, the dogs salivated when they see the food, but Pavlov experimented by when the dog see a food, he start to ring a bell and give the dog food. After that, the dog connected with the bell, which when the dog see no when the dog hear the ringing of the bell, the dog starts salivated because he already believed that when he hear this sound, he going to get a food. And this is the experiment from Pavlov called classical conditioning. And there are experiments called operant conditioning, and this method is for inducing behavioral change. In this case, training a dog involves positive or negative actions on the part of the owner to reinforce or punish the dog behavior. So in this experiment, it's also used the dog for the experiment. And as I said, it's about positive and negative, reinforce and punish. So I will talk about positive reinforcement first. Positive reinforcement is giving a reward encourage a good behavior. This one is easy. It's like when you when you tell your dog to sit down, after he sit you give a treat. So the dog learn quickly that repeating the behavior will earn the another treat. So he think that if I heard the sound of sit, if he sit, he will get a treat. However, in a negative reinforcement, it's just like the owner removes something bad to encourage good behavior. For example, the lead goes slack when the dog walks close to the owner. The dogs learn to walk to heel without pulling and so avoid the choking sensation. Next, I will talk about a positive punishment. The positive punishment is just like the owner do something unpleasant to discourage bad behavior. For example, when dogs pull a head on the lead, its collar feels uncomfortably tight around his throat. So the dog learned that he shouldn't go in front of the owner too far. And lastly, the negative punishment is by taking away something the dog enjoys and it used to discourage desired behaviors. No, discourage undesired behaviors. Sorry. For example, the owners turns their back on the dog to stop the dog to jump for the attention. So the dog learns not to jump because the dog thinks that he will not get what he wants. Even he jump, the owner will not give him attention and he feel like is tired, is not makes any sense to the owner, so he will stop doing it. So, lastly, I will talk about the theme of behavioralism. First, methodological behavioralism. This this theme is developed by John Watson, as I already talked about it briefly. This called methodological because it focuses on a scientific methods. John Watson viewed psychology as science and its goal being to prediction and control of behavior. The most extreme theory of behaviorism because it rules out any factor from person DNA or internal mental states, like I said before, excluded all the thoughts and emotion. Even the inherent or innate instinct. It's assumed that people are born and their mind are blank. They learn all their behavior from the people and things around them, like classical conditioning that I already talked about. For example, a baby smiles back when the mother smiles, or cries if the mother raises her voice. Next theme is radical behavioralism. This theme was invented or developed by B.F. Skinner, which allowed for the influence of biology on behavior. Skinner believed, like Watson, that most valid approach to psychology was ones based on scientifically observing human behavior and its trigger. Skinner took classical conditioning a step forward with the idea of reinforcement. Behavior that is reinforced by the reward is more likely to be repeated, like operant conditioning, as I said before. Um, in summary, in this theme is just like Skinner believed that the things that influence our behavior is from external environment and also biology. And last theme is psychological behaviorism. This one is developed by Arthur Stats. This theme gained dominance over 4 decades because it informs current practice in psychology, especially in education. A person's personality is shaped by learning behaviors, genetics, emotion, brain process information, and from the environment around them. Stats research that importance of parenting in child development. He showed that early linguistic and cognitive training result in advanced language development and higher performance in intelligent tastes when children were older. Or, in short, psychological behaviorism believe that cognition, emotion, biology, and external environment, all of this influence our behavior. And this still used nowadays. So, this is all about the behaviorist approach. If I'm talk too fast or too slow or give you a wrong information, I'm so sorry and apologize. My mother language is Thai, as I said, and English is my second language. I hope you get knowledge from my podcast, and I will develop myself after this. And I hope you enjoy my podcast. Thank you for listening. until the end and see you in next episode. So good luck and bye bye.